Hello, and welcome to Makers.dev, episode number 19. Chris, howdy.
Howdy.
How's it going? How are you doing?
It's going all right. I fixed my toilet, so
Okay.
so that's better. The entire subfloor was not ruined like I thought it was, so that is good. The wood floor is still messed up, so sometime later we will have to pay someone to either tear it all up and replace it with like tile, or get clever with, we don't have any extra of the wood, so we'll have to get clever with like stealing bits of wood from another part of the house and patching it up.
Like a skin graft? For
Yeah,
burn
exactly.
victims?
But
Okay.
for now, it all works. So, yeah. So that's how I'm doing this week.
All right, good. I also was able to fix my metaphorical toilet on your recommendation of just like, why don't you put all your newsletters in a separate folder and not consider those things you have to do? I was able to knock it down, and also some actual work of like I actually went through some emails. I was at over 300 around the time of our last episode, and now I'm at 129, which
Awesome.
if I only do 18 emails per day for the next 7 days, by next episode, I'll be back at 0. And I can do roughly the same thing if I do like 18 of that and 18 to 20 of customer support emails next week. I'm done, and I'm back, and I won't feel like a big old piece of poop. I'll feel like a productive, great human being. Yeah,
That's cool.
That's how I'm doing.
I kind of went the other way this week. I usually have like 1 or 2 unread emails, and those are like my big to-dos. And now I have up to like 12 or something, and that feels bad.
Ooh, 12.
I know. But
That's almost as many Chrome extensions as you have.
yeah, but I have to do something for each one of those 12, and like one is taxes, and one like, so I just, yeah, I just got to do it.
Tax stuff is happening for me today too. We're recording this on the 15th, which is the last day to do things. I want a person I can just be like, do all the things I don't want to do. But to do that, I need systems so that they get in place. And all right. We have more fun stuff to talk about. What did you get up to this last week? Talk to me about more like ML AI stuff. What are the
So I did more ML AI stuff. There's a few interesting things we could talk about, but the stuff I did was generally, I did some more GAN stuff. I did some more just playing around with MNIST, sort of re-implementing all the different things that I know. Like I know they exist, and so now I kind of have a better understanding of how they work and, you know, how to implement them myself and things like that. So that's all kind of foundational stuff. I have an idea for something I'm sort of exploring in that space, which is neat. Not a business idea, but like a sort of like a research idea. So that's kind of interesting. Trying to get sort of see if I can get state-of-the-art results using, you know, less data and you know, some more advanced techniques. So that's kind of neat. Just right now, that's all just fun stuff. But you know, maybe that'll turn into something. A couple of the things that we could talk about around that. The first one is I want to start teaching some of this AI stuff, because my MO is kind of like I learn something and then I start teaching it, and you know, that's how I've grown my Twitter following and also like gotten, you know, consulting deals in the past and stuff like that. So I want to do that. But my question is, should I do that under my current domain name, which is chrisishard.com, and my current sort of sphere of things I do? Or is it different enough from JavaScript web programming that I should start like a new domain, maybe a new Twitter account, something like that? What do you think about doing things under your own domain name when they might clash with, you know, current expectations versus something else?
Here's my hot take on that. I have the exact same problem, because I am interested in so many different things that have the only overlap is things Christian is interested in. And I'm going to be going off in a whole new direction later this episode. 30 by 500 by Amy Hoy and Alex Hillman recommends to start a new blog anytime you're audience building. If you do the research and you figured out, oh, sign printers is the thing I want to do. You may have some members of your audience that are currently sign printers, but starting from scratch isn't that big of a deal. So make a new blog that's signprintersusa.com. And that concentrates the audience. And then, yes, that audience is much smaller, but it's so much more pure. It's only people who are interested in the thing. The way that I've sort of adapted that for myself is I have several audience building projects in the pipeline at any given moment. One of them is this podcast. One of them is this alumni podcast I'm doing with the people who were in the same academic program as me in college. Another one is like tutorial videos for coding and like this learn to code sort of audience. And I think the correct way to frame that is that I have my own personal brand. And my personal brand is like, this is me. I'm going to talk about all the things I'm interested in. That's what my Twitter account is. That's what my email list is on my website. And I reference all those things I'm doing from my main account. So like if you are a sign printer and you want to learn about sign printing stuff, okay, well, I'll tweet a few times. And like if I have a piece of exceptional content, I'll put that on my main brand. But like most of the stuff on that is getting chunked out on the sign printing blog. And that way that sort of keeps my main audience fresh of like, these are people who are, I like to think, more holistically interested in me. And then if they want a clearer signal of like, actually, no, I'm just interested in coding tutorials, they can subscribe to that YouTube channel and just get that. And I think there's more work I could be doing there of like segmenting my email list. I think it'd be cool if like when people signed up, there were checkboxes of which of these things would you like to get updates on that Christian's working on. I'm sort of doing that when I launch a new project of like, I'll have a waiting list that'll say, the person only wants updates for this specific project. So I have like an email list for Clips.marketing. And I'm only going to email that list for things about Clips.marketing. I have another email list about the MicroConf recap. And I only email them things about MicroConf recap related things. And sometimes I'll pull in things of those in my main channel and direct stuff outward. I think that's the balance that I'm seeing. So I would recommend starting a new thing and then like referencing it from your main channel, and then continuing to reference things if there's like an exceptional piece of content. Like if you launch a new course, I think that would make sense. But for the daily posting, audience building posts, that goes in separate channels.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's sort of what I've been doing up till now. I have like a ConvertKit. I have multiple lists for every individual like siloed thing I do, and then if I want to email them all, I can always merge that in ConvertKit to send a mass email or something. But that is probably what I'll do. The other thing I was going to say is learning all this stuff again. So I learned it all in college and then last year and a couple years ago, but learning it all again is it gives me like a new it makes me see things through the learner's eyes again, which I think is always good for an educator to do. Like if you make content, you should probably learn something new just to experience that again. Cause like there's something I want to do, right? And I know it's not that hard. And once I learn it, it's going to be easy, but getting there is like really painful. And, so if you take an expert looking back, it's like, why aren't you understanding that? It's easy. But as a beginner kind of going through it, it's just really hard. And so I think that's really good for anyone making content to like remember that there are people that don't know what you know and that find it very difficult. And so however you can break that up into really nice chunks for them to digest is good. So yeah, I'm just kind of enjoying that process again, learning something and figuring out how I'm going to teach it to the next batch of people.
I love that idea that if you're making content, if you're teaching people, it's important for you to remember what it's like to be learning those things. I think more generally the lesson there is like, if you make dog food, you should own a dog. Like,
right.
You don't necessarily have to eat the dog food yourself, but you should be like using the same product that you're working on. And I feel like that's in a lot of ways why I feel disconnected from File Inbox, because that's not a problem that I experience as much, and why I feel much more connected to Clips.marketing, because that's a problem that I'm having. And like in the process of doing that, I actually have these problems. I'm exploring the space of what are other ways that I could get this done? What are ways I could get it done in Final Cut Pro? And let me go to all the message boards to see how I can get this done. Like I'm living and breathing in the space, and I'm using it from different angles. And also on the course side of things, taking Ali Abdal's Part-Time YouTuber Academy, one of my biggest takeaways from that is just, wow, what a great way to structure a course. What a fantastic experience this was as a student. And how can I steal as much of this as possible for the educational stuff that I'm doing? Yeah, I love that. My dad also, I had a conversation with him 2 days ago. He was a doctor, and he's been retired for a few years, and he wants to start a resort at this place in upstate New York that we went to as kids and that he went to as a kid, called Jenko Village. It's a place that his dad and his uncles bought together. And he has it now, and he's wanting to like start a hotel and host weddings and have like experiences of, yeah, you can go out on a kayak. And a problem that I brought up to him that I'm working to frame as positively as I can is that he is not the sort of person who consumes that type of thing. When he goes and stays in a place, he stays at like a La Quinta and makes fun of people who spend any sort of money on food or entertainment. And where I am trying to nudge him in the direction of is like, I think it would be very valuable for you to experience this as a consumer of wedding venues and resort places and experiences. And I showed him Airbnb, and he grew up in New York. So you're going to hear my dad impression of his New York accent. But he was like, oh my God, it's $40 for a kayak rental. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you think that that's stupid. And because you think it's stupid, you are not able to unlock this potential of being able to charge people $40 for a kayak. Because it's going to be a bunch of little stupid things of like, do your life preservers smell bad? That's the sort of thing that would matter a lot to someone who is paying $40 for the experience. That for him, of just like, I picked these kayaks up and they were used, I saved $10 on them. And so they only cost me $25 each, and I got a whole bunch of them. Like, having the mentality of trying to minimize the cost of something is very different from focusing on revenue expansion of like, how could you provide the best service for someone? And the best layer to be focused on in how can you expand revenue, how can you offer a very valuable product to someone, is to be a consumer of those things yourself. So, yes, I think that's really cool that you are becoming a better teacher by practicing being a student. I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. There's a lot of great lessons in there for especially software developers building software also, because we do not care about the same things that our customers care about often. And so that's where the whole charge more things comes from, because I think developers generally don't pay for stuff like executives would pay for things, and so if you're like making something for a business, it's a fundamentally different equation in terms of cost, when you compare it to like how much it costs for a person to do the same job. Your $19 a month app, doesn't even register on their radar. So, very similar.
What a tricky perennial problem of like, you want to make things for people who are similar to you because then you can understand them. But like, the most value is in making things for people who are dissimilar to you. My dad is going to be charging people money to rent a kayak, but the type of person to do that, the type of person who like would buy a bunch of kayaks and have land to put the kayaks out on, is not the type of person who would pay $40 to rent a kayak. So you have to be similar in that you like kayaks and that's a thing you value, but you have to be very dissimilar. And like, someone who starts that business, like my dad, would probably never in their right mind rent $40 for a kayak when they knew the economics of it. Like, you could buy a kayak for $150. Like, what are you doing? You could buy it and then sell it immediately. It's an interesting problem, and it's one that I feel a lot in software.
One way to fix that, especially, so if you're going to be running a resort, you're going to have staff anyway. It's a little different for us because we're solo devs, mostly. But so the fix for your dad is probably to do something like go find the best, the best reasonable kayak renter, in a 5-star resort somewhere, and offer him $100,000 to come run his kayak rental place or something, but basically to hire people whose job it is to get people to pay money to do experiences. And it could only be like one person at the top, like maybe he has a chief experience officer, and pays them to oversee the whole thing or something. And I don't know how big this resort is going to end up, but basically paying people that are not you and have experience, charging $40 for a kayak rental to come and tell you what you need to do in order to charge that much.
I agree that that's a great direction to go in, and that is nowhere near the scale that my dad is at, nowhere near the scale he's even dreaming of. But like, and going even further than that, like the concept of hiring someone to help him set up a kayak system to be able to rent that out, I think is something that would be really difficult in his current mindset to justify, because he's thinking very small. He's thinking on the scale of like, what are ways that I could save $10 per kayak, instead of what are ways that I could turn just the kayak rental part of this into a business that makes, $10,000 a month over the summer. And those are very different layers to be focused on. And if you're focused on the layer of how can I expand revenue as much as possible, you can so much more easily justify, okay, maybe I bring in someone who's done this business and hire them to do this thing. And like, there's a subtle difference between these kayaks, and actually this does matter. And yes, the kayaks themselves cost 10 times more than if I bought them at a garage sale, but that means I get to charge $20 more per kayak rental, and the pictures of them look much nicer. And I don't know, maybe they have glass bottoms, and so then they make much more Instagram photos, and then that expands the business much more. I think I tend to be much more critical of my dad when I see this thinking in him, because that's something I notice in myself of
Right.
like saving pennies to, what's the phrase? Save pennies and penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah, that's the one.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I noticed that in myself, and I'm working very hard to counteract that and be like, okay, no, yeah, this does make sense. I can spend $1,000 on Facebook ads, because even if I don't make any money from it, I've learned how to do Facebook ads. And there are people I've talked to who can turn $1,000 on Facebook ads into $10,000, and like that's
Right.
something I would like to be able to do.
Yeah. This is funny because I actually recognize the same thing in my dad, which is funny. So my mom and dad own a business. My mom does artwork. She presses flowers and also does watercolors. And then my dad basically is
cool.
the sales arm of it. So it's kind of a neat thing, right? And so he was an engineer for many years, and now he's like doing this artwork thing. And he makes some decisions, and I go, like, why did you spend a ton of time learning WordPress and fighting with it all yourself rather than just, paying $30 a month to Squarespace? It's the same thing. He's like, well, I can host WordPress for $5 a month or whatever he does. But then if I think harder about it, it's like, well, this is his retirement thing. Like, it's not, like he would like to make more money than he spends on the business, but it's not super critical for his livelihood because he has, his engineer's, retirement that he's living on basically. So I just stopped giving him suggestions that I knew he wouldn't like at some point because, and I'm like, he asks me for tech advice and stuff all the time. So I'm upfront when he asks me about it and stuff, but it's just like, let him run it how he wants to run it. And, at least in this case, because, it's not like he's going to lose a ton of money. Now, running a resort, you can lose a whole bunch of money doing that. So it's probably good if he has a really good plan. But so it's like different. Like in this part of my career, I'm working on maximize my future earnings. But in my dad's career right now, it's like, how can I retire nicely, right? So it's just a different mindset.
This is sort of the opposite of what we talked about last week of, in retirement, you're trying to enjoy the work. And so I think that the unified theory of this that I'm coming to is, if you're trying to grow as quickly as possible, spend a little bit of effort learning a domain so that you know enough that you can make good decisions on who to hire, how to spend money to get the thing done that you want done. Learn just enough that you know that you need a 4-inch pipe instead of a 3-inch pipe, and then hire someone else to do it, and then move on to the next project for yourself. And balance that with do work that you enjoy. Don't get stuck managing people and losing track of the reason why you like this. Like, both of us, and it sounds like both of our dads, are technically minded people who like getting in the weeds and things. And like, given infinite money, I would still be doing that. I would still be wanting to dig in and learn a thing and like doing the work. That's consistently the most fulfilling way that I've found to spend my time, is learning those things and finding work that I enjoy and then pushing forward meaningfully on projects. And so, if I were my dad and I hired someone to create the kayak arm of this resort business, like, I think he could be making a lot more money a lot faster. But maybe part of why he's doing this is that he would enjoy figuring that out and like making the systems to do the kayak. Yeah. I don't know that it's straightforward where to be on that spectrum of doing the work yourself versus hiring it out.
Yeah. And the other thing he could do is something like, if he wants to do it himself, but he still wants expert opinions, go on LinkedIn, find the experience officer for some 5-star resort and say, can I pay $100 to call you for an hour and just ask a whole bunch of questions about what you would do in my situation. And see where that goes.
I think we talked about this before with me, of the most effective place for me to be spending time is on human experts.
Yeah.
Because then the human expert can like point you in the right direction, but you still get to learn about the thing. And then, even, you could maybe, after borrowing the expert's time, it becomes clear that it would make more sense to hire someone right away. But that is very straightforward bet that will most likely, at the very least, get you oriented in what the right direction is. You can pay a little bit to jumpstart yourself through that initial 20% of work to understand 80% of the thing. Yeah, I like that. That's a good general solution.
The other thing that I know he's going to run into is he's probably going to start looking for, people with lots of experience or something like that. But for something like, say, events, like weddings, probably like the number one thing that you need to do is, especially weddings, make them like Instagram worthy, like you were talking about, which probably means you should hire like a 25-year-old out of school who knows everything about Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And on paper, that looks like a terrible hire, but really, it's probably a really, really good hire. So.
Oh my God. I would pay so much money for a Netflix show of my dad trying to do business with a 25-year-old Instagram influencer.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That would be so funny. That it would just be constant conflict. Oh man. Oh, that would be hilarious. Oh my gosh. They would not be speaking the same language. But that's his biggest blind spot. Of course. And the Instagram influencer would be like, hey, it's really important that you like hire this $2,000 photographer to go through all the rooms and take pictures and be like, $2,000? I got a camera right here on my phone. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that to him just to see what happens. That's really funny. Cool. You've had some projects seemingly on the back burner for a few weeks of Acorn Chat and Meeting Place. Any updates on those? Any interesting things that happened?
Yeah, so I did a little work on both of those too. So I'm starting to inch back into there. That's kind of how I operate. I go really far into one field and then sort of inch back into my other one. So Meeting Place, I did some work on. I have a little bit more work to expand the API for an existing customer. I really want to, the next big thing I want to do in Meeting Place is switch it to Tailwind with a new design, because it's getting hard to do things in the old design the way I want them. So, and I know.
What's it in right now?
It's in Bootstrap, yeah.
Okay.
But I sort of painted myself into a bit of a corner. So I want to do sort of a revamp, which on paper doesn't make sense. Like why would I do that? But I'm realizing that whenever I go to change stuff, like it just bugs me. Like the way the design is kind of now and the way so I think I just need to do it for my own sanity, and then I can do some of the other things. I think I've gone back and forth with Meeting Place because I think I could probably get it to 1,000 or 2,000 MRR without that much work, because it's been, and of course, if I can get it to that, I should be able to get it to 10 or 20, right? Like that's sort of the thing. But I've been avoiding it because I know the work that's coming. And so I've talked about this before, but like to really get to say 10K MRR, I need a lot of groups with a lot of people and groups have a lot of people in them. And so there's going to be a lot of support work. And so I see that support work coming, and that's kind of why I backed off mentally, because like I just don't, that's not something I want. I don't want to, like we were talking about last week. Do we want to, build Squarespace and have, people paying us $19 and running their entire business on our websites? Not really, as a solo dev. But I think it is worth it for what I have. And like, I know the next few steps, try to get it to say 1 or 2K MRR and then see how the support load is. And I can always back off again, if I get to that and it's starting to get too much, I can back off. But then at least I've tried. So yeah, so I think I'm going to do that with Meeting Place. Acorn Chat 2, I'm started that up again. Like, I actually ran it for the first time in a couple weeks the other day. And so I just need to get that on past the finish line where I can get it to the Slack App Store. So those are my two big goals. So get Acorn Chat on the Slack App Store, get Meeting Place into Tailwind, which will make me more excited to work on it. Cool. While still playing with AI stuff.
I relate so strongly to avoiding it because that there's this work ahead of you of having this huge support load. That's exactly the position I feel like I'm in with File Inbox. And I think our personalities and like work proclivity are very similar. There has to be a solution to that I'm not seeing of like...
I hire somebody, but I don't know that I want to do that. So
yeah, same. And it might look like more educational content of anytime you have a support request, you film a video about it. I've sort of seen the author of the Mon test Rob Fitzpatrick do that. He has a whole YouTube series where people ask him questions about the book, and instead of replying to them one by one over email, he'll record a little video about it, and I think that works really well. I think going into this next batch of customer support emails, I'm gonna try that, because if there was a backlog of those videos and they were titled well, I could imagine building a system where, like, okay, I have public documentation of all this, so you can search through it and it's a live search. So while you're trying to email me, maybe the exact problem you're having pops up. Or when you email me, I have some basic ML word matching thing that's like, okay, Christian got this email and he's very bad at customer support email, but he's trying his best. In the meantime, here are some videos that he's recorded of solutions to this. And thinking about that, now that I've gotten this whole video framework with KMed and everything else smoothed out, it wouldn't be that much more work to record videos than to just type a response. And then I think for problems that aren't solved in that way, like refunds or something else that need more creative solutions, I think I need to think really critically about what would have to be true so that a person who had this problem wouldn't need to email me. Maybe people can issue their own refunds. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I have the videos more front and center.
Yeah.
It's funny also, you're the next bit of work of like recoding it in Tailwind from Bootstrap to get yourself more excited about it. I have had the exact same framework for File Inbox. Like I have had the exact same idea. Right now it's in Bootstrap, and I've thought, if only this was in Tailwind, it would be so much more exciting to work on. I don't know how it's going to go for you, but like I have had that idea for the last year and a half.
Yeah.
So I wish you good luck in cultivating your own excitement in doing this.
Yeah. So yes, hopefully. I've wanted to change it to Tailwind already for about 6 months. So maybe I only have a year left to go, and then I'll be a year and a half in. Yeah, so I've done this. I fixed this a couple different ways in the past. One is just, so especially with like Meeting Place and now Acorn Chat, trying to put as much information in the spot where people are going to need it as possible. So it's almost like in the app, sort of writing mini docs that go right next to the thing. And most people won't read it, but if you do read it, then that's basically the docs right there. So that's one thing to do. The other is, I think it's a great idea to record videos, especially if you transcribe them and then put that in a Google searchable way on your website. Because those are going to be really high intent keywords, and Google's going to, index them, and then you're going to get probably a lot of, people get a lot of traffic from docs. I was reading, so Tailwind, so they said specifically that the docs are the highest source of their sales, through Tailwind UI, which is not surprising at all for Tailwind. But then a bunch of people chimed in and basically said for their, B2B SaaS, it was the same way. Like the docs page was their biggest referrer to the sales pages.
Love it.
So yeah.
What a great way to generate content too, of like people are, maybe I'm just thinking about customer support emails incorrectly, that like instead of a burden and evidence that I'm bad at supporting my product, maybe it's people reaching out to me, telling me ideas for content to make.
It is like exactly what they need to do. And so there's probably 10 times, like we talked about engagement, right? There's probably 10 times that number of people who think that, and then just get stuck in your funnel because of it, or whatever. And
it's already in the customer's words. Interesting. And I could imagine the machine I would build of like the email pops up and then I hit a keyboard shortcut and then I record a little video about it, and then that slurps right over to the File Inbox YouTube channel, and then it's going to be a short video, so that'll upload pretty quickly. And then in response to that person who just sent me that email, I can send them the video. And then I imagine I'll hit a critical mass. Like after video 20, I'll start getting a lot more cache hits of like, this is just like video 5 that I made. And then I can just send that instead of making a new one. This feels like a breakthrough. This feels like a way to make this fun. Okay, cool. What a good idea.
Cool. So that's what I did this week. What did you get up to?
So,
sounds like a tangent coming.
This is a whole thing we're about to get into. So, for the last 10 years, I have wanted a 3D printer. And the deal that I made with myself is like, I don't quite know what I would do with this if I had it. And things like iMaterialize and Shapeways exist, where if there's a single part that I want to make, I can just ship it off and get it. And their 3D printers are much better than the ones that I could get. So when I get to the point where I have more things in my queue of things to 3D print than would make up the cost of a 3D printer, which has been like around $300 for a decent one, then I'll get a 3D printer. And I've existed in that state for 10 years. And recently, I've had some ideas for, it'd be really cool if I had one of these paper cutting machines, because I had this idea that for the Oculus Quest 2, it would be really nice for me to use it later in the evening if there was a red light filter or a blue light filter, colored red, on it. And I made a little prototype, just like cutting it up with scissors and put it in. Works great. I love it. But it's like all janky, and I gave one to my siblings, and they were like, "God, this is great." And so that would be like a fun thing to be able to give to people who have an Oculus Quest 2, or maybe sell it on Etsy or something if I can figure out how to automate that. But to do that well, I was thinking, okay, I'd want one of these little automated paper things so that I just make the design and then I can cut out a bunch of them. And then my sister is getting married next month, and there are some customized things I want to get for her. Her name is Sophia. Her fiance's name is Patrick, S and P. So I was like, how cute would it be if I got them little salt and pepper shakers that were engraved with Sophia and Patrick? Yes. So I had these. So for that, I would need like a CNC machine or maybe a high-powered laser cutter. And I have a friend locally who has these things, and I was like, hey, for specifically the wedding thing, could I pay you to do this? And he was like, yes, for $80. And I was like, $80 sure sounds a lot like $300. Maybe let's just dip my toe in, just see what the deal is. And there are some great laser cutters on Amazon for around $300. They measure the laser's power in milliwatts, I think. And so like for a 15 watt laser or a 1500 milliwatt laser, that was going to be around $300. And like it can engrave almost anything, has a little bit more trouble with shiny reflective metal, and it can cut through thin wood and paper. And then I was thinking, oh, actually, this would also solve my problem for the paper cutting thing. And then I started seeing, in shopping around a little bit more, there were some combination CNC machines and laser cutters. And I was like, how does that work? But okay, if you already have the 3-axis thing and you have the bed, well, you just swap out the head. Instead of a laser, you have a little spinny and Dremel thing. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I could get both of these things at the same time, and then I can do some CNC stuff and I can do some laser stuff. And then I found the Snapmaker 2.0, the sequel to the successful Snapmaker 1 Kickstarter campaign, that is a combination CNC machine, laser cutter, and 3D printer for $1,000. Now, $1,000, you might be saying, isn't that so much more than $300? Well, yes, it is, but it's a really nice, all of those things. And like, if I'm spending around $300 for each of them, okay, well, that's about $1,000. And now I get a bunch of cool things. Like there's a camera on top that gives you a little preview of what the thing is. And it's made of this really high quality, like custom CNC'd aluminum, and instead of like the little chintzy stuff that you have to make yourself. And there's a whole community around it. And, you know, it has a nice screen that goes to it. And now it's one device. And so now it's, for my minimalistic mentality, like it's going to take me 10 minutes to transition and to swap out the heads and swap out the bed for these things. But now it's just one thing that I have to worry about instead of these 3 separate machines, and I'm able to do this. So this last week, my brain has just been exploding with like, well, if I have a 3D printer already and I can just 3D print anything, the cost for me of doing this is now so much lower. What things would I have if the only thing I was paying for was like the amount of plastic that it weighs? And so I've got all of these ideas now of like, I could 3D print a laptop stand for my girlfriend because she said she wanted a laptop stand, and I could engrave these wedding gifts, and I could do the Oculus Quest 2 thing. And for my time tracker, there's a device now that I'm thinking of prototyping that's like a little keychain thing where you push buttons on it, and that's updating the thing that you're working on. And now I'm thinking, okay, I could do more outrageous things for the wedding of like, maybe I CNC man cards is a thing that I've seen. So like, off the joke, you lost your man card for doing this. I could like hand out those man cards for things. And I just like immediately before this podcast, I had the idea, oh, wasn't it a thing that you could vacuum your hair and then it cut it to a really precise length, because I got trimmers that work really well for the sides and back. But the top is still kind of weird. It's difficult for me to get a consistent length on the top, because I do like 2 inches on the top, and that doesn't quite work for the trimmer. But I was thinking, okay, if you had a vacuum cleaner and then you had like something to cut your hair, that would work really well. This apparently was a product in the 90s called the Flowbee, and got really popular during coronavirus.
Yep.
And now old versions of this, it's no longer being made, but you can buy old ones of it on Amazon for $280. And on Thingiverse, people have made prototypes of this, of like, here is the Flowbee. You can just print it out for just the cost of plastic.
Yeah, I'm really surprised.
And there's some clever things with different designs.
I'm really surprised no one has tried to mass produce those again. Like, if the company's out of business, just try to print a whole bunch or something.
Yeah, that'd be a really good idea. And I love this solution of just like anyone, anywhere can get an idea for a thing, and then you can just print it out at home. I feel like I'm living in the future. I feel like I just got a major significant life upgrade. That's what I got up to. So the hot take I'd love on that is like, do you have a 3D printer? And if so, I'd love to know the things that you print on it. And whether or not you do, I'd love to know if you could just 3D print anything, what would you 3D print? What things would you make in this new world where you can just download the design for a thing and have it be a real thing in your life?
Yeah. So no, I don't. Sort of the same reason. Like, it's like every once in a while I think, oh, I really want to 3D print a little part or something, but it's just not enough, enough times for me to spend it. What I almost bought several years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, was a CNC machine, because those seem super cool. There was this guy who blogged all about how he CNC stuff, because you can get extremely accurate with a CNC machine, and then if you cast it in silicon and then you pour resin into that and make a part, more accurate than 3D printers. So that seems super cool. But I could not, like, he made like little toy like cars and stuff, and I couldn't think of a better use than that. So I just didn't buy one, which is good, because I would have used it once, and then set it on the shelf. Recently, so we got a new Christmas tree, and the old one, like, it still works, but the lights don't all work, and it's like smaller for the new house that we bought. So it's like a small tree where the lights doesn't work. So my wife turned it into her Harry Potter tree. And so now we have 2 trees every year, and the old one with no lights is now a Harry Potter, like, so there's all sorts, like, there's these little like Funko Pop makes these like Harry Potter figures, and I drilled a hole in their head and like hung a thing on them.
Okay.
And then she got a lot of, when we went to London, we visited, there's a shop run by the people who did like a lot of the artwork for the movies. So they're like an independent, there are a couple who did a lot of the artwork. Anyway, so they sell things. So we got a lot of these little artwork things. Anyway, what we wanted to do was 3D print a whole bunch of, like any, thing you can imagine basically is 3D printable on, on Thingiverse from the movies. And so I was like, maybe I could do that. But that's like, I'm spending $300 for the printer, and then, more on the filaments just for like Christmas ornaments. And that seems like a waste. Anyway, so no, I don't have one, but if I had one, I would probably print some Harry Potter ornaments for my wife.
All right, a new goal that I have in life is to pressure you into getting one, showing you how cool they are.
It wouldn't take much. I'm every time a new one comes out, I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, but, this is the one that pushed me over the edge. Like, if I had found out about this when it came out, I think I would have bought it right away. Because, like, it wouldn't make sense for me to buy a $1,000 3D printer. And it wouldn't make sense for me to buy a $1,000 CNC machine or laser cutter. But for all 3 of those things, my gosh, what an expanded problem space of problems that are now in the adjacent possible of things I can solve. Of like, if I wanted to CNC a very accurate thing and then make a silicon mold of it or something, I can do that. And if it would make more sense to 3D print it first, I can do that. And maybe I'd 3D print it and then CNC it later to get some more finer detail. I'm very excited to see what comes out of this.
The other reason I almost have bought one is, so our library has a few in like this digital media lab, and they ran a thing once where they helped you make Harry Potter wands, 3D printed Harry Potter wands, for the kids, right? And so our kids did that, and I saw their brains kind of light up with all the different possibilities of being able to make things. And so like that is something really interesting that I could, that's sort of able, if I'm able to expand my kids' minds in that way, then it's probably worth $1,000. Just like think of it like an educational expense,
Yeah. Oh, I think you could pull the trigger on this today. Just for your kids' educate, for the children, Chris.
Right.
For the children.
Think of the kids.
I would love to make a quick plug for this 3D modeling system that I found called Openscad or Openscad. I don't quite know how to say it. Are you familiar with it? Have you looked at that?
No, we used some free program by Google when we did ours. I don't know what it was.
Maybe
though.
SketchUp?
So it wasn't SketchUp. I know that SketchUp exists. It was something like SketchUp, but it wasn't. Okay. Yeah, anyway.
I hate SketchUp. And I hate the like more commercialized version of that, SolidWorks and programs that work like that.
Yeah.
Because it's a GUI, and those just don't make sense to me, and I want to reach in and like know like, no, tell me the data that you're working with, because I need this edge to line up with this edge, and I don't want to click and drag it. I just want to say like, okay. I want to know what the code is, and then have these numbers be the same. And Openscad or Openscad is that. It's a programmatic language where you can deal with primitives and like do this three-dimensional geometry things of adding and subtracting. And I didn't realize this until 2 days ago, but there's a whole library of parts that people have made in this language. So if you want to like have a screw, there's a library of someone who like has written out, here are all the different real-world screw types, and you just, as a function, you just create the screw, and here's all the parameters that a screw would make sense of, like the thread count and the width and the length and everything else, and then that's your model. That makes so much more sense to me than having these click and drag GUI interfaces where it isn't as straightforward. And then like you have code, and so okay, I can check this into version control and say like, that's my cool. Laptop stand. This is laptop stand version 1, and we publish it on GitHub and also publish it on Thingiverse because that just compiles to an STL. So I think that's the way forward. It's kind of tricky and more of the softer geometry, but I'm thinking for that I could maybe do something in on the Oculus. There's some 3D things, and SketchUp also has a VR app. So I'm really excited to figure out like what's my process for building these things, and is there. Could I maybe like preview things in VR and still be coding them in Openscad? There's the tooling is not quite where I would like it to be, but like there's a lot of potential there. So I'm excited to learn how that works.
That's super cool. I guess I should have realized, but I didn't realize that there were code solutions, like, because everything you see is visual, like UI based. So that's neat.
Yeah, and just makes so much more sense for my brain. I'm reminded of, have you read any Neil Stephenson? Like the Diamond Age?
Yeah, I read, well, so 7 Eves him?
7 Eves. I don't know. Maybe.
I should look that up.
I'll link them both in the show notes. We'll figure it out. In the Diamond Age.
Yeah, Neil Stephenson, 7 Eves.
Okay, cool. I'll read that one. I haven't read that one yet.
It's really good.
In the Diamond Age, there's this concept. He like invents the concept of 3D printing, and there's feeds that feed in just matter from the ocean and then feed it to everyone's house like a public utility, and then that's the stuff that you then make stuff out of. And there's a scene where this little girl gets hold of her parents' contraption to print out stuff, and starts printing out like, little doll beds for all of her dolls. And you're just able to do that. You're just able to like, that's how you order stuff. We don't have Amazon. You can manufacture anything on demand at your house. And like, there's some limitations to it, but how cool is it that we can just do that? It's just code. It's just data, and that defines the thing. It's like the Platonic ideal to the instantiation of the thing is, okay, we're sort of making the Platonic ideal of the thing with the code that thing is, and then you can instantiate it by printing it out. I feel like I'm living in the future. I'm so excited. It gets here later today. Oh, oh, it's so exciting.
Yeah. That's funny. That reminds me of a story that happened. I think it was just this last year. You mentioned Amazon, and like the Echo Dot devices are really close to that. So there was a story of someone who didn't lock down purchasing, and their 4-year-old ordered like their kid ordered a giant stuffed banana. And so, $100 giant stuffed banana showed up one day, and like, what are they going to do? Tell their kid now, like, and their kid opened the box and now bonded with the stuffed banana, and like, what are you going to do? Send it back? And
amazing. That's great. What a great future that like, when in history has it been possible for a child to do something like that? Yeah. Like, they're not going to go wander into the village and accidentally talk to a merchant and buy stuff from them. But like, we've smoothed out the process of ordering things so much that like, yeah, you can do it accidentally now. A child can do it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love
Which,
it.
which side note, we for a long time we had like one iPad for me and the two kids. Like it was my iPad,
Yeah.
but they got to use it. And then for Christmas we finally bought the Kindle Fire Kid editions, which come with a great plastic case, and they are really really nice. So we didn't own any Kindle stuff before that, but on the kid editions you can lock it down so they cannot spend real money, which is great. No in-app purchases, which is awesome. I want that for myself. And I think you pay like $3 a month per kid or something, and they can play unlimited games, anything that's in this Kindle Unlimited like thing. So you get so my wife is now playing The Sims, which normally costs money, but it's totally free for $3 a month. And they get to play a whole bunch of games that also has like books and audiobooks. So you can say like you can play your Kindles, but only books. That kind of thing. And then there's all sorts of parental controls. So like we have them turn off at 8:30 at night and stuff. So yeah, if you have kids, Kindle Fire's Kid Edition are a good deal.
That's so neat. I will link those in the show notes. Yeah, good. I like that. It's like if someone made an iPad for kids, that's what you would want to do. You'd want to be able to limit it. And yeah, cool. I'm excited to have kids so I can use these sorts of things and justify purchases like a 3D printer with. It's for the children.
That's right.
It's for the children to play around with stuff. I have one more topic I would love to talk with you about, something that came up for me this week. What do you know about NFTs?
So not much. I know that, so it's very interesting that it's basically like a digital receipt on the blockchain for a piece of art, which can be anything digital. So, GIFs or movies or JPEGs. And one just sold for $69 million, I think. So
stupid.
So yeah, they're interesting, but I don't know much past that. Yeah.
My position on them has flipped completely. Last week, if you had asked me my thoughts on NFTs, I would have said this is the dumbest thing ever. Because you're not buying anything. You're like, what does it mean that I have a token that represents this JPEG, but the JPEG is identical to the JPEG that anyone can get if they just download it? I can sort of, it makes sense to me that you would want to own physical art because that's so much more difficult to replicate. It means something to me that you own the Mona Lisa because, okay, now there's history behind this physical object, and like you can go up to it and there's something sort of mystical about, you can see the brushstrokes that Leonardo da Vinci centuries ago painted this by hand. And this physical object has a physical history of like, this is the chain of people who owned it. And here's the time in history where it got stolen and then was brought back. And like, here are the people who were involved in this thing. So that means something for me in a way that it doesn't make sense to own a JPEG, because a JPEG is data. It's trivially easy to copy. Anytime you're viewing the object, you are copying it. And so who cares that you own it? That was my view a week ago, and it's completely flipped because I realized that if there was an NFT for each XKCD comic or each blog post by Derek Sivers or Patrick McKenzie, and I could own that. I could say like, oh man, XKCD number 123. I digitally own that comic, and maybe you could make it. You could sweeten the deal for me of like, maybe in xkcd.com, it has a little banner at the bottom that says this comic is currently owned by Christian Janko.
Right.
How cool would that be for me to be able to link people to the comic that was like meaningful to me in my life, and for them to go to it and be like, oh, you own this comic. Like, this really is meaningful to you. You have sunk an amount of money into this thing. So, like, there's an amount of money that I would pay just to burn to be able to experience those emotions of my identity and the identity of this comic are now intertwined publicly. That I've like proclaimed ownership of this thing, and that's a way that I can express my identity of like, I'm the type of person who values the idea expressed in this comic, and as proof of that, I have put money down. And I might say that that's like, I don't know, I might spend like $300 for the experience of being able to do that. But there's an additional layer of NFTs of like, it's still very much cryptocurrency. So if I want to at any point in the future, I can sell this. And art, depending on the type of art it is and depending on the economy and different things, can appreciate in value. And that's a risk, and it's a whole calculus of it. But like, thinking of it that way, okay, if I'm willing to burn $300 on it, and there's some volatility in the market, and like XKCD is a thing that a lot of people enjoy, and I could expect that there are a lot of people out there who feel the same way about XKCD comics, and so and there's an active market trading these comics, and so I can see what they're buying and selling for. I could justify spending a 10 to 100 times multiple of that on this thing if I'm looking at it as an investment, as opposed to just like a proclamation of my identity. If other people are also finding it valuable, and if there's an active market for it. And that makes perfect sense to me, of like, okay, I get it. I didn't get it before because I haven't seen any art on the blockchain that I actually care about. I think it's all bad. But if it was a Derek Sivers blog post, and at the bottom of that blog post it could say, this is currently owned by Christian Jenko, like, that would be worth something to me. And then once it's worth something to me, I can understand how it would be valuable to other people. And now I can see how I could sink maybe not $69 million, but like I could put a lot more of my own money towards this as an expression of my identity. And then like, it's kind of cool that instead of just owning full index mutual funds, like I have some weird things in there too. Like part of my investment portfolio are XKCD comics and blog posts by cool people. What's your opinion on that? Where do you fall on that? So which of my arguments have swayed you?
I definitely think it's amazing for artists, because a lot of digital artists haven't had much of a way to capitalize on their work other than, like selling prints, which is not that, for most people, is not that valuable actually. And for so the creator of NanCat, right? That was one of the first major ones. I think that was $500,000 or something it sold for.
I hadn't read about that.
Yeah, but before that, he made $0 on that, right? And it's used everywhere. Like, people know what it is, and people, so like, it makes sense that he should get some money for creating NanCat. And now he has. And I don't know if this is automatic for NFTs or not. I don't know that much about him, but I think he gets 10% of any sale going forward also. Like the artist does automatically, and that happens because it's on the blockchain, right? That can just be part of the thing. And so, so if it, it's sold for $500,000, if it sells for, $5 million in 10 years, he gets another $500,000. The artist does. And so so I think that's awesome for artists. The other thing is like people collect stuff all the time, and it doesn't really make that much sense a lot of times. So you can collect, baseball cards or comic books, and you could photocopy a comic book, right? And then you would have the same content, but it's different than owning the actual thing. And so, that's definitely what NFTs give you. I think they will be. I think this as a concept will be huge, in 20 or 100 years. Whether or not the thing selling today will still have value in 4 or 5 years, I have no idea. Is this a good short-term investment? Probably not. But in 100 years, I bet NanCat, will sell for $1 billion, whatever inflation adjusted is for that. So I don't know. It's super interesting.
NanCat, absolutely. What a perfect example of a thing to be valued in this way, because that is a purely digital creation that I can see being valuable to someone if I had a whole bunch of money, and I think NanCat is really cool. If that's been meaningful in my life in some way. And I know that it's done the work of becoming popular. It's just as much in the public consciousness as the Mona Lisa is. Of course, I'm going to put money towards that. And what a fantastic benefit of this system, of that now the creator actually gets rewarded for it. I love it. It didn't make sense at all to me last week, and it makes perfect sense to me this week.
Yeah. The other thing it fixes is the problem of provenance. So there's this great documentary new on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about an art forgery that happened at a gallery in New York. And over, 20 years or something, they sold $80 million worth of fake Rothkos and Pollocks. And there were 12 artists or something. And before they knew they were fake, each of these, paintings, they range between, $100,000 and $12 million or something like that. And they sort of had to get provenance for those, which means try to figure out if they're real or not. Basically, they went to experts to see if it the same type of paint was used and the same style, and like it was a really big deal. And then in the court case that followed, which the documentary covers, it's like the person selling them at the gallery actually still maintains that she thought they were real. Like she brought in the experts, like they said they were, they looked original and that kind of stuff. And so, but now if it's on the blockchain, like there's no question, it either was on the blockchain or it's not. And unless you 51% attack the blockchain, you can't change that. So it fixes that problem, which is super interesting.
The problem for me then becomes, how do you know, like, who's to say that this Nyan Cat is the real one?
Yeah, so that came up with Nyan Cat especially because the person you're trusting, I think that was sold through foundation.app. And so you have to trust the original person to put it on the blockchain that is the creator of Nyan Cat actually selling the thing. And if not, then you get fakes. So yeah, there's no fix for that. That's true.
I could see also a problem of like, what if the creator decides like, oh, how great is this that I've made a bunch of money from this? Let's do that again. And then he says,
sells it again.
Sell another one. And it's still mine. That, like, who's to say that he can't make a second one or increase the number of shares? I think is the thing that you can do on NFTs. You can have like shares
there's like copies or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
My guess is there will be some modern art piece, which is someone who sells the same thing twice, and then they'll sell the rights to that modern art piece as another NFT. That's my guess there. That's kind of like the guy who was investigating what is modern art. It's a YouTube video, and in the end, he like takes off his beanie, which he's like known for wearing, and he like throws it out of a window or something, and then he frames the beanie and he says, "This is modern art because it has a history now and everything." And the hilarious part of that whole thing is he later sold that framed beanie for some crazy amount of money. And so it really did become modern art because he did something. Anyway, so that's the first person to double sell an NFT that's modern art, I guess.
I love it. A framed beanie. like the toilet or the urinal.
Yeah. That's Seth Godin line.
I suppose it's up to the artists. If the artist wants to dilute their own art, they're like in charge of the supply side of their own little marketplace. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because there are artists who were just like prolific, who like Van Gogh made. I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's something like he averaged painting 3 paintings a day for like 3 years.
Oh wow.
Longer than that, actually. I'll put it in the show notes. He's just got thousands and thousands of paintings. And so Van Gogh is a very valuable artist, but I imagine for a random Van Gogh painting, that would be worth less than, I don't know, a Da Vinci painting, because there were only ever 5 Da Vinci paintings that were ever discovered. And maybe if I knew more about art, I could probably make a better analogy. But I can imagine an artist where their style of art is they make prints of things. So like they etch things into copper, and then they make 100 prints of them, and then they destroy the copper, and then they're on to the next thing. So for every print, that's worth like 1/100th of if there was an identical artist who, instead of making prints, made a painting. And I think that's just up to the artist So as long as you've verified, like, yes, this actually is the real Nyan Cat that came from the actual creator of Nyan Cat, it's up to him if he wants to sell 1 or 100 copies of those things. And yeah, and then I guess, I don't know, if you're a buyer and you want to own all 100, you could own all 100, and it's like you own all of them. Okay, yeah, that still makes sense to me. Yeah, NFTs.
I think Salvador Dali is the most famous artist I know of that did that. He made lithographs, which are basically just copies. So, but he numbered them, right? So from the beginning, he decided how many he was going to make, and then he numbered them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Neat. That's all I got.
That's all I got too.
Then I will see you. Excuse me, I was trying to time it so I could sneeze after the episode. I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.